you better do it yourself. It's very unlikely that someone actually picks up a paper and then calls you and say, oh, I saw you did something great. Can we license it and build a company around it? That happens, but it doesn't happen really often. So the best and probably most effective way is to do it yourself. But that means you have to take the risk.
Has anyone ever given you one of those calls?
Yes.
Really?
In fact, my first company was built that way.
Hello, David. Thanks for joining us today.
It's my pleasure, Edit and Ali.
Yeah, thank you. We're really excited to talk to you about Modality, about your history, your experience. And I guess we can start with the first question. Walk me through your story of becoming a founder. What led you down this road? You have decades of research experience under your belt in computational linguistics and speech processing. Why transition to the world of startups? And then specifically with Modality, why target neurological and psychiatric conditions?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I've been in startups for quite a while, probably about 20 years now. When I came to the US for the first time, 2007, I joined a startup in New York, and we worked on solutions that are very different from medical space. It's actually was in the telecommunication space, but similar AI technologies back in the days. As you rightly said, I did a lot of work in academia afterwards. I became professor of computer science, but still with one foot in the startup world, always, all the time. And so at some point, I felt the impact that you can make as an academician is nothing compared to what you can accomplish when you actually run your own enterprise. Because only when you really execute the ideas and these technologies and bring them to customers, you can make that impact. And that's really what made me really create an own startup in 2016 for the first time. And Modality is actually the second that I founded myself. And why in the medical space? As I mentioned, I've been in other verticals, such as telecommunications, such as educational testing before. I believe that there's a very, very significant need in doing assessments in conditions like Parkinson's disease, depression, schizophrenia, and related neuropsychiatric conditions where there is no solutions today. And we have in our group individuals that are able to do these things through multimodal artificial intelligence that otherwise would not be possible. And that's why I found a really significant product problem fit in that way, which made me go into a medical space for Modality.
Perfect, thank you. And you did mention earlier that you've always had your foot kind of in the startup space, but also in academia. And you kind of realize later on that you can make more of an impact in the startup space. What drew you to academia at first then?
Well, I'm a scientist by training, electrical engineer, PhD in electrical engineering, did a lot of foundational work in artificial intelligence, signal processing, speech processing, computer vision. I have over 200 publications in the space. And I love the science, so that's how it all started. But I love the execution, the implementation of those in algorithms and actually bringing it to end users. So the products really also played always a significant role in what I've been doing. But then even the product and the science alone is not making an impact yet. You need to create a business that has a viable business model so you can actually bring this to the end user and really change their lives. And that is something you can actually only do, in my opinion, in a for-profit startup environment where you really can, expand, raise money, create a customer relationship that then and learn from your customers about their most bothersome and painful problems that you can then address with these products and these solutions.
And I think this actually relates to a later question that I did want to ask you. Looking at Modality as a company and the information that's available on the website, they're still very active when it comes to publications. The company's putting out papers pretty often. And I wanted to ask you, how do you feel about that interaction between companies, especially startups and academia? Do you think it's mutually beneficial? Do you think it's going to expand and change as we move into the future and more startups pop up and it becomes more accessible for people to found their own companies? How do you feel about that interaction?
Yes, that was actually, it's really good observation that you had there, because it's very unique about us as an AI company as having a significant relationship with the academic world. That is necessary in our specific space. What we create as Modality is called digital biomarkers. These are biomarkers or endpoints that are used in clinical trials to assess whether drugs are working. And that is a regulated space. It's a space where a lot of scientists, biotechnology scientists, are working in, and you need scientific proof of that these measurements, these artificial intelligence-based measurements, actually do the job, that they're robust, sensitive, reproducible, and explainable, and these sorts of characteristics, which means we need to publish. It's our bread and butter, is our currency when we sell our solution to customers. Our customers are pharma companies and biotech companies. And so that's why it's very important for us, and which is also very close to my heart because of my academic background. So I really loved this combination of doing foundational science with 7 PhDs in the company. And on the other hand, of course, very industry-focused products that make an impact. Now, this is not the case in many other startup companies, obviously. So if you build, say, a platform, the SaaS platform, say, a sales platform, for example, it doesn't necessarily have to be based on very scientific insights from the beginning. You can use artificial intelligence solutions, obviously, to help the processes, but it's more about software engineering, more about user experience, more about really getting the job done over and above proving that the performance is over 90% of that specific solution. So that doesn't play much of a role there. That makes a lot of sense. You don't want to spend a lot of your effort and time in these companies on that. That would not make sense. In our case, it is necessary.
Yeah, so what you're saying is Modality is in a pretty unique position where publications are really key to your company, as you do these biomarker assessments. And I think for the people who may be listening who may not be super sure as to what that means, because you give a really quick rundown of what it is Modality does at a pretty high level.
Absolutely. So we create what we call self-driven neurological assessments. Neurological, I mentioned already, Parkinson's, depression, schizophrenia, these are the diseases we are tackling. What we do is that we have a virtual agent, if you will, that interviews patients with these diseases. And we can tell from what patients say and do, their speech responses, their facial movements, their language, their body movements, how they progress to disease, and how treatments are affecting disease progression. And so that is something which you do on your own device, your laptop, your smartphone, your tablet, anything that's web connected can use Modality today. We send you a link. You click on the link and it pops up in your web browser on your device. So you don't install any apps. You don't need any special devices. You don't even need to remember passwords and usernames because we send you a personalized link. And so it's very, very simple for patients to participate. We are used exclusively in clinical trials that are sponsored by biotech and pharma companies. So not in healthcare, but in the pharma industry.
Do you see a world where you expand to healthcare? And I guess this also relates to another question. How do you see, what's your vision for the future of, conversational AI and self-assessment technology? And where do you see Modality positioning itself in that future? Do you eventually want to move to conditions outside of neurological and psychiatric conditions?
Absolutely. The vision is to really bring this to everyone who wants an assessment for themselves. And the beauty is it is so accessible, right? Everybody who has a device that's web connected, which most of the people in the world do, can actually do a session with Tina or Virtual Guide today. Of course, we had to focus on a very specific niche market segment that made sense. Often talk about beachhead, market segments when you start a company. In order to be successful, you can't do everything at once. You can't boil the ocean. You need to start with something where you have a very good fit, where you solve a problem that is super painful for your customers. And that is what we have determined to be the biotech world, where the most painful question, the most painful problem that these companies have is to demonstrate that their drug is working. And specifically in neurology, most of the drug trials fail. Over 95% of drug trials fail And that is largely due to the fact that you cannot show that the drugs are working. And the reason is that how is it being done today? So the way you're being assessed, for example, for schizophrenia, is that you have an interview with your psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist asks you questions and then fills out a survey form. And it's a very subjective and event that's happening there, the survey form, and that's the basis upon which a drug gets approved or not approved. So you need to show statistically significant improvements in the average value that the survey interviews produce. And in most cases, this is not possible. And what it means is that billions of dollars for a single drug, right? To develop a single drug, it costs about $3.5 billion end-to-end process. So the chances are, the high chances are, that you will not be able to bring the drug to the market just because you can't prove it. And so this is a $1 billion question that we help to answer. So it's a significant pain point on the one hand, and then we have a really, really clever solution to do this, because we show in very strong, sensitive, and robust terms how even subtle changes appear and how they track over time. And so that's why we started with, going back to your first question, that's why we started in a very specific niche, which is biotech and biopharma trials, and we'll then expand into healthcare eventually. Healthcare is, of course, the accelerator is about healthcare. There's many different aspects to healthcare. The market is, I don't know, a $3-4 trillion market, right? Healthcare spent in the United States. But in reality, there are many sub-markets, many small markets. The one that we address is about 18 billion in TAM. So it's a small segment of this only, but it is sizable when you think about it. And so, yes, the vision is we do this in clinical trials. We expand from observational studies through phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 studies. We are now in phase 3 studies. We will expand eventually into post-market studies, companion diagnostics, where drug companies roll out their drugs in the market, start selling them, alongside an assessment like Modality, which shows actually whether the drugs is effective and whether the dosage is effective. So that helping, for example, schizophrenia patients to determine whether this is the right choice, and helping doctors to determine whether they should change the regimen. And this will be then the opportunity for us to really enter healthcare for the first time and expand from there.
Perfect, thank you. And I know you did mention that going into biotech, going into drug development was the first kind of niche you wanted to target. And then within that, you wanted to specify even further to these neurological conditions, because right now it's just a survey with a psychiatrist. It's very subjective. Is that a problem that you had some sort of did you find that problem due to a personal observation or personal experience, or was that you did your team went, okay, where do we focus? Is that more of like a market research thing?
Yeah, personal relationships and personal experiences definitely in various ways. I mean, I think all of us have family members or maybe own experiences with things like dementia and with the elderly, or mental conditions that are around us. And many people, pretty much everybody I talk to has a personal story to share and can connect to what we do. The reason why we started with CNS, not only because it is so difficult right now in terms of assessments, it's very different from, say, cancer. If you go in cancer, you do imaging, and you can see, whether the cancer is shrinking or growing, so you can just measure millimeters. But in CNS, what happens in your brain, how can you make sense of it? And what regulators want to know is, how do patients function, feel, or survive? Of course, we cannot wait until everybody dies, so we have to focus on how they function and how they feel. And that's what Tina actually does. She observes your performance, she measures how you function, and she asks you to describe your own problems in your own words also. So she also cares about how you feel. So these are really important answers that we provide for the biopharma companies and the regulators. Now, CNS is, of course, very obvious place to start because there's really no assessments apart from these surveys that exist today. There's other conditions that we have been working on already for some time. We had a award-winning publication on Lyme disease, for example, the first paper that actually really looked deep into neurological effects caused by Lyme disease. We are looking at long COVID, obviously, is another such area. We look at certain types of cancer, behavioral conditions, autism, for example. So there's a whole bunch of things that you can do in addition. And Tina asking what bothers you most about your problem or about your health is something that is really applicable to pretty much everything. But not now. Right now, it is really strongly focused on Parkinson's disease, ALS, and schizophrenia for outbound commercialization.
And I did want to ask about Tina there. You did mention that Tina will ask you how you're feeling. Does Tina speak through the app? Is that a voice?
Yes, she does. So it's a natural conversation.
Okay.
That's my background. I was working for almost 2 decades now on what's called spoken dialogue systems that speak to humans and have a natural interaction with humans. So in natural language, right, you speak, and Tina talks to you, and she watches. Not only does she listen to you, but she also watches how you behave, how you move your face, and you can do finger tapping and how you move your body as well.
So with Tina, when she speaks, I think this is a concern for me, or a kind of a question I had. How do you make it so that she seems comforting and, like warm and accepting to whoever's using the app? Because I feel like that's an important part of the experience there.
It very much is. So it is very important that our user base develops a connection to Tina that is positive, right? That you're coming back next time. So it's a regular, often longitudinal study. So every 2 weeks or so, you have that call with Tina. And the way we did this is really through many iterations of product improvement. In fact, just last week, version 40 of the product was released. So we had 40 iterations through which we improved and optimized the user experience. And we do this every single interaction that Tina has the opportunity for patients to give us feedback on what they think and what they felt and what they believe, didn't go so well and what went well. And so we review this feedback every other week in a scheduled call. It's really funny. One of our senior research scientists, actually, he provides like a full overview of all the countries and all the completion rates and all the observations and also important pieces of feedback that we learn from, and we open tickets for these and address those directly. By now, almost 80,000 patients have used Tina, so there's a lot of learning that we have had over the years. And one of the things is, Tina, she asks you questions and she always gives you a back channel, like a neutral but reassuring back channel. She doesn't necessarily understand what you say, and often these things don't need understanding because you have to read a passage of text or describe a picture. And she gives you a little bit back channel, positive back channel, and then moves on. And she has a soothing voice. She's an elderly woman. We can also switch to other appearances. So yeah, and she's very, very patient. So you as a patient, you can speak as long as you want about your condition. Very, very different from an actual physician. Actual physician has only 5 minutes and everything needs to be done in these 5 minutes. And no, Tina has all the time you want. She asks you, what's your most problem? And if you have another problem, please tell me about it too. So, and our patients actually speak for 20 minutes sometimes, just about those problems.
And when you did so, how did you go about the process of choosing the voice actors for Tina? That sounds like an interesting and fun process, picking someone. I think your voice is comforting.
It took a little bit to identify a good voice actress. And at some point, we went through the exercise of actually studying whether we need an actual professional voice actress, which we started off with, or whether the quality of speech synthesis today is actually good enough to bring the same effect, the same comfort to our user base. And we ran this study where we compared speech synthesis voices with the actual voice actresses, and found that there is actually no meaningful difference between the two. So from then on, we actually used speech synthesis, and using what's called speech synthesis markup language, you can actually modify the intonation, how excited they sound and how fast they speak. So you have a much finer control over the certain parameters of the voice quality. And this is one advantage. Of course, you're much faster. So we can change our protocols, what Tina says, so fast because it's synthesized, it's automatically generated. And another significant advantage, I think by now we would have had a real problem, is that Tina is multilingual. We are by now in 17 languages and dialects. Just imagine what it would have taken to hire all these voice actresses to accommodate this. So that's the reason why we use automated voice today.
Nice, thank you. So I want to shift a little bit more to kind of your history, a little bit away from Modality. So you've lived all over the place, jumping between both Europe and the Americas many times. And what would you say the main difference between the entrepreneurial culture in Europe and the US are? And also the differences in the kind of science, investigation, or research cultures in Europe versus over here?
Yes, you probably have heard that many times, that the specifically entrepreneurial environment is a little bit more difficult in Europe than it is in US, maybe significantly more so. This is about venture capital funding that's available. It's about the general attitude of people, and I know certain countries. I don't know all. I don't want to talk about all the countries. I can certainly certify that in certain parts of Germany, for example, it is often there's so much skepticism about new things. Any sort of innovation. You need to prove things for years, 100 times before people would be open to using these things. Things like a self-driving car like Waymo or full self-driving mode in the Tesla, it is unimaginable and will take a decade and maybe never arrive in certain areas over there. And that is really because there's a significant skepticism in society, in the regulations, in the governments over there. And maybe sometimes for good, but that's not necessarily the environment that you need, or it's not the environment that you need in order to do crazy things, such as the use of an artificial intelligence, a virtual agent in high stakes interventional trials to identify whether drugs are working. So that's not something you could have proposed over there that easily. Having said that, one of our major investors is actually a European fund, Novartis Biosciences from Belgium. But they have their feet in both worlds, in Europe and in America, here in California as well. Of course, money, general attitude, regulatory environment is here also more welcoming, more flexible. GDPR, of course, is a significant regulation, even the AI regulation lately, that prevents certain things from happening or making things more complicated than they could be. And so I hear this over and over. If you really want to build a thriving startup, at the end of the day, you will end up in America. Maybe you start here from the get-go. That is probably the best way to do it. And from the academic, I'd say from the academic world, it's really well intertwined. So we attend many scientific and clinical conferences in these different disease areas, and these are usually international conferences. So with significant contributions from all over the world, Europe and US pretty much on par on many of these topics. US probably still a little bit at the forefront of many things, but also Europe playing a significant role alongside Asia, of course.
And was that an odd dichotomy for you, having your foot in both startups and academia, but feeling as though, you know, with academia, it's really balanced, and in startups, you have to be in America. Was that an odd experience for you, or did you find a way to manage that?
Well, it made me eventually step out of academia. I had a very comfortable position. I was a tenured professor in Stuttgart, in Germany. And it was a difficult decision then to say, look, at some point I needed to give up the tenure. You are a civil servant in Germany, so you have a salary for lifetime and all these credentials and benefits. And is it worthwhile stepping out of this and take over the entire risk that you have now, right? Deployment of risk and employment of risk, and you have no security whatsoever, right? Anything can happen. And that's not for everybody. For me, it was the right thing to do because I believed as an academician, at the end of the day, you don't have the impact that you need. To write a paper, to get cited, to be celebrated with awards at conferences, that's not impact. It's the foundation of building impact. It's the foundation of actually taking this and run with it and build something that really affects the lives of many. But then I understood, and it's actually not that difficult to understand that as an academician, you're not going to find someone easily to run with it. You better do it yourself. It's very unlikely that someone actually picks up a paper and then calls you and say, oh, I saw you did something great. Can we license it and build a company around it? That happens, but it doesn't happen really often. So the best and probably most effectful way is to do it yourself. But that means you have to take the risk.
Has anyone ever given you one of those calls?
Yes.
Really?
In fact, my first company was built that way. It was a wealthy entrepreneur from London in the UK, and he called me and said, "Okay, I've read your papers, and I believe we can do something together along these lines." And we created a company here in San Francisco and in London called EMR.AI, which was based also in clinical space. It did medical documentation, an automated scribe, basically listening to interviews between patients and physicians and creating automated records for these. And that was one of these calls, and actually resulted in me co-founding with him my first company.
And so how did your experience with EMR.AI kind of influence your mindset going into Modality as you've seemingly moved on from that and, onto different things? How did that your approach?
It had a significant influence because at that time, things looked really easy because I had a co-founder who was wealthy and he had good connections. And so things were smooth. And it's a different experience when you start from scratch. And with Modality, we started actually from scratch. We bootstrapped the company. We started in 2018 with $25,000. One of my co-founders brought in $25,000. That's all we had for about a year. So none of the 5 team members took any salary for a year here in San Francisco. So that's the commitment and the risk that we took. And then we went and were admitted to the Alchemist Accelerator program here in San Francisco, which chipped in a little bit of money, and then we started raising money from angels and so on. So from then on, it went upwards. But that is maybe a typical experience, and it was really worthwhile and really founding the team.
And so if you don't mind me asking, what happened with EMR? Where is the company now? How did that progress?
Yes, so the company had a sister company that basically assumed most of the assets, most of the data that we had, and that was acquired by a private equity company in London. So it's still operating. We are, I think, used by about 25% of the NHS, National Health System, transcriptions over there. So in good use. At the same time, we wanted to build a company that is really becoming a major player in the field, and with medical record transcription at that time, it wasn't the case.
And so I have to ask then, why did you step away from EMR, and are you still involved in any capacity with what's going on over there?
No, not anymore involved with any capacity. Basically the sales of assets happened around that time when Modality was created. And I was also involved in yet another company at the time. So pretty complex scenario. I'm full-time Modality since 2021 when we raised our first prize round.
And so about that other company you were involved in, what's the story behind that?
And that was Casisto in New York City, and previously actually education testing service here in San Francisco. I am the founding director of the San Francisco office for ETS, education testing service, who are the people who do the SAT and GRE and TOEFL tests and so on. So I was leading the research team that is responsible for automatic speech assessments, AI-based speech assessments, which are being used for some of these tests. And so that was the duty we had there. But by the way, several of the team members that are Modality today are from back then. We brought them over. And I also had a senior director position at a company in New York City in parallel, in charge of data science it's a fintech company called Casisto, which is still around and thriving.
Nice.
All about artificial intelligence, chatbot systems, dialogue systems. So they played like the specific technologies that I've been involved with played a significant role in all of these domains.
Thank you. And you mentioned that some of the people from ETS are with you now at Modality. And so when you were initially creating that team for Modality, what was your approach? How did you, recruit your members? Did they come to you? Did you go to them? How was that whole process?
Well, that's the beauty. Many of the people that we have in the company are longtime friends and colleagues of mine. There's one person, for example, one senior research scientist. We've been working for 20 years now together. So he was in our first company in New York, and we actually met in Columbia University even before that. And there's several of my students which came on board from Stuttgart. There is people from ETS. So it's that trust relationship that you build over the years. And of course, we know each other so well that we function almost like a unity. And that is really helpful in going through the ups and downs of startups and really being flexible and fast and reliable. And so when the idea emerged to create Modality, I talked to several of my ETS colleagues whether we want to do this together, and 4 of them actually decided to come with me, and so we did that together at that time.
Nice. And how did your students come on board? I feel like that's an interesting relationship.
Isn't it? Yes. So that was during the time when, in the beginning, we didn't have any money, and I was reaching out and saying, look, is it something that you want to do maybe part-time first alongside the studies that they were still involved in? So at that time, I think they were finishing the master's or in the middle of the PhD program, I think. And so they took some time aside and worked at the company first part-time, and then once they graduated, they came on board as full-time scientists and technologists on the team. But the same thing, it was really beneficial because I had built this relationship for a long time with them. I had taught them the foundations of artificial intelligence, computer science, so they knew all the foundations already. We had been working on research projects at the university, and so it was a really seamless opportunity for us to expand the team, bring them in, and so now we know each other also for something like 13 years or so.
Wow, it's really an interesting story having your students come back and work with you eventually. I think that's really cool. And I think it's a relationship I want to have with some of my professors here one day. So I think it's something I can definitely relate to and find really interesting. Um, Random question here. ¿Hablas español?
Sí, hablo español también. ¿Por qué? Porque,
I only speak, that's all I can say. I
okay.
wanted to ask because, I see that you lived in Mexico, lived in Barcelona.
Uh,
How was that as an experience, and why, why move there? How was that? What drew you there?
yes. Well, I think I have this sense of really going into the world. I'm not sure whether I want to show you something. Hold on.
I'm excited. What are we about to see here?
Yeah, this is a book by a German author called Karl May. He is the most read German author, and he's a person who wrote about fictitious travels and journeys he had, specifically in the Wild West and in the Ottoman Empire. He was around in the late 19th century and then early 20th century. That's when he wrote something like 100 novels about his fictitious travels. So this is one of the inspirations for me to really, and I read a lot of these when I was a child. I really wanted to see these places and go to these places and experience them, not just as a tourist, but experience them, be part of society, understand what life looks like there. And so he traveled to South America, Latin America, specifically to Mexico, and fictitiously again, during the time of Benito Juarez, and the war over there. And so that was one of the reasons why I wanted to live in Mexico. It was also one of the reasons why I wanted to go to Spain, to America. So all these were kind of inspired by these ideas, and so Mexico was definitely something which I tried to accomplish during my master program, and so I built this relationship with Siemens, which is one of the largest engineering companies in the world, headquartered in Munich, and they provided significant financial support during my career. I'm very thankful for them. They sent me to Mexico, paid all the expenses there, paid me stipend, and then later during the PhD, for 4 complete years, paid all my salary for the entire family, and with no strings attached. So it was significant stipend. We could do whatever we wanted. We moved to Los Angeles, we moved to New York City, moved to Barcelona, and had really significant freedom doing that.
And would you say that I guess I have 2 questions here. I guess we'll get to the first one first. Would you say that being in all these different places affected your mindset and kind of your view on approaching a company, or did that kind of affect how you approached solving problems in any way, getting exposed to all these different mindsets and environments?
I believe what it definitely helped with is to understand, that everybody is different, and that I appreciate that everybody's different, because everybody brings this perspective to the table, many different things that I have no idea about, and I have to step back. I was giving this example the other day when we were chatting on Slack, that I'm not a conductor in front of an orchestra as a CEO. That's not how I feel myself to be. I'm rather one team member of a jazz band, and so everybody is playing in sync some parts of the jazz standard, and then everybody plays a solo performance and is in the center of attention. And that's really what I feel. I'm really just guiding and shaping and helping everybody to be their best. And so that's something which I definitely found, traveling the world and working with so many teams and so many people with different backgrounds and personalities. And we really live this. In the company, there's people from all over the world and all sorts of backgrounds together young and old and gay and women and everything, all sorts of colors of skin and so on. And that is such a, of course, such something pretty normal in in the Bay Area. And that's why I also love to be here. I think it's the best place, San Francisco.
And so you have now mentioned both, feeling like a conductor of a jazz band, this kind of connection to music. And also you did mention the influence of German literature on you earlier. So I did want to ask, beyond being a researcher and a founder, it seems you have interest in both making music and literature. So I guess, could you explain what Morbis.net is and kind of the writing that can be found on there?
Absolutely. Yeah. Let me start with the music piece, because that's even more meaningful, I think, because I grew up, doing a lot of stuff in music. I actually had my own bands in rock music, and I wrote an own rock opera, produced it, the script, and we brought it on stage. We toured with it. Was called Garbage. It was really and produced a lot of records and CDs at the time. And the question was really, is that going to be a career for me? Do I want to be rock star? So that was the question, which I was asking myself like in the later stage of high school. But then I come from a dynasty of engineers and scientists in my family. So there was this conflict. Okay, what am I going to do? If I become musician, it's very likely going to be difficult to cope and pay for a living. As an engineer, not so much. And so I decided to go for engineering, but try to live and be close to the musical experience. So I decided to go for electric engineering and go to a school that had a very strong acoustics and music production department. The funny story though is I became a research assistant at that department. But you know what? I actually liked the professor better that was working on speech processing at this department. So I got along really well with him. A lot of mathematics, and so the speech processing person, Professor Hoffman, he actually brought me into artificial intelligence, because all of this was AI-based, and so I was working ever since in AI. 25 years ago, I started with that, and so I've never stopped working in that field. And so that was the kind of connection between the music and then actually starting in this field, which was really an interesting transition. And yes, with literature, I've been writing quite a bit, several novels, and I continue doing so even when my kids were born. I wrote books for them. I told them stories. There's a lot of stuff that's not even on the websites, which exist, but we haven't really published it yet. So there's a lot of interest in that area also.
Wow, I think that's really beautiful how your interest in music kind of led you to, speech processing and AI, and it's a kind of bridge from your passion leading to what you've been doing for the rest of your life. I also think the researcher and rock star balance really was kind of funny to me.
It's not only funny; it's really, I think, a trait that does help, because I do a lot of public speaking, obviously, at conferences and other places, and it helps to have been on stage. To actually go on stage and present these concepts, and so yeah, I do look around here, actually
Oh, wow.
here with equipment, and here's a piano over there. No, you don't see it, but I play pretty much every day.
Are you gonna ever?
We have a family rock band. We play a lot of heavy metal lately. So tougher stuff, but so with my family, my son is a much better guitar player and drum player than I am.
Any big influences for the family musically?
Yeah, well, we're allowed into, as I mentioned, now heavy metal, System of a Down, Lamb of God, these sorts of things.
Wonderful. Wait, that's really cool, actually, to be able to play with your family. That's something I want to do one day. I actually have my guitar in the corner. You can't see it right now.
Oh, okay.
Guitar sitting in the corner.
Yeah, look at this. Yeah, it's so much fun. My daughter is singing My wife is playing bass, guitar.
Wow.
So yeah, so
The whole band, yeah.
band.
Could you speak a little bit more about how creative outlets such as making music and doing literature has provided you with, unique value in your life and career beyond, being comfortable with being on stage? Do you think there's other benefits that it's kind of provided over the years?
Yeah, what I think specifically about playing, for example, piano, maybe singing, it's a type of meditation, in my opinion. So when I sit on a piano and I start playing, it requires so much concentration and so much introspection that you zoom out of everything else around you. It's like meditating where you stop thinking about the things around you. That happens automatically when you concentrate, when you play music. And of course, the sounds of the music, the harmonies, the melodies, that do their job as well. So it's a fantastic way to find a balance, and it's I think something that is so important.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think I always sat down whenever I was having a bad time in high school, I'd always sit down on a piano. Some Debussy would help. I think the other thing for me was athletics. Playing sports always helped me with that. Do you think you have a similar? Have you always been?
Yeah,
Have you ever involved in?
similar thing for me. I go to the gym and swimming quite a bit, sometimes hours, and many laps. And same thing when you swim for a long time and you don't listen to anything, you have to have your thoughts start wandering, right? There's nothing that distracts you. You're not on your device. You're not working. You're not speaking to anybody at the time. So it's just like you and yourself in the water, and going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then I think it's an important part of life because life's so stressful, right? You're always so focused that you have to let go in regular intervals to really get the balance. And one more thing, which it's not that important when you're younger because you are so powerful and you can sleep only very little and continue pushing things forward. At some point you will have the impression that you don't get everything done that you want to get done, and maybe you have that now, but this sort of feeling that there's all these things that you still have to do, all these emails you have still to respond to, all these customers you still want to reach out to. You can work 100 hours a week, and you will still have that thought, but you haven't done it all. So when you realize that, you can also say, okay, look, then I probably just put a certain schedule in place where I work just a reasonable amount, and then I stop, and I push myself to stop, and I take that time off, and I do that music, and I go to the gym, and I sleep 8 hours, and I spend some time with my family, and I take maybe a day on the weekend off and go to the movies, because you will always feel guilty. I'm not sure whether you do this, but I always feel guilty. I should have done more, regardless how much you do.
And I think that's a beautiful piece of advice to kind of, remind everyone to try and maintain balance in their life. And I think branching off of that, going a little bit more back to startups, do you have any advice for kind of as a final question? Do you have any advice for other founders, students, or people in general trying to break into the health tech and entrepreneurship space?
Yeah, entrepreneurship, of course, in general, as you all know, because you have worked with many entrepreneurs, it's a very daunting experience, right? There's every day something awful happens, or something, and something good happens. So it's often balanced, but it's often an experience that you believe, okay, why is it happening to me? Why am I not able to raise that big round? Why did that customer not buy that? And why is that other company seemingly moving forward faster, better? This is something that happens to all of us, right? It's something which is just so common. And you need to be I believe everybody should be aware that we are all in the same boat. it's so normal. It's so normal that you will see that people raise rounds, and these are just some, there's a significant bias, of course. When a round is announced of a startup, it is one round out of thousands that failed or thousands that did not move forward at that moment. So it's a significant bias. So we should just be aware that everything is all right, and you don't have to think your personal. It's your personal thing that sometimes things are hard. Things are hard. And that is probably is very helpful. Like Health Engine as an example, it is really good to be among people that have similar backgrounds, similar experiences, and share these experiences, because it does help and give you confidence that, look, often it feels so lonely, but it doesn't have to. People are around you that have the same issues. What does help is, in our case, I'm really blessed by the fact that I'm not alone. I have co-founders, I have a leadership team of 5, and I have a company of 16, and we have many advisors, many investors that came in, many people, many customers, many people that are around us that we share the history with, and that helps also to remove that impression that you are all by yourself, that you are responsible for everything, but you are not. You're responsible for something, but others help in the process. So that's important, because there's sometimes sole founders, there's sometimes even dual founders that feel so much pressure on themselves, and it's I think not necessary. It's a very positive thing. It's everybody who tries this, I have great respect for them. And then the question about healthcare. What do I think is my advice for healthcare? It is really about we talked a little bit about this, the industry at large, how big it is, 4 trillion. It's really about you finding your specific niche to get started, because healthcare is a fantastic opportunity because there's so much money at play. At the same time, it is so tough to enter and find a business model that's going to play out, where your technology is going to be adopted and then paid for. And so you certainly want to think about this even before you build any product or so. Think about this very early on. We went through this NSF I-Core program you may have heard about, which is over there at UCSF. I think Berkeley has also a certain branch. They are affiliated with the Lean Launchpad methodology, helping specifically founders in the life sciences and healthcare space to think about business model, think about customers, think about value proposition first before building products, and talking to potential customer prospects first to identify what is the problem that they need to get solved so that you can build a product that really addresses that problem. And that is something, by the way, we didn't do it. We did the I-Core, we did a little bit of this, but we had already minimally viable product at the time. We had already placed our bets when we entered that program, and we were lucky because what we built is what was needed. But in most cases, you build something that is not needed. And to overcome that and to save that time and that disappointment, you do this, speak to your customers. It's so tough for technical founders, like scientists like myself, because you don't think customer first. It's a mind shift. But for you guys, you have both, right? The technical background, but also the business background. And that's, of course, fantastic because you think both at the same time. I come from technology. I only thought technology and needed to learn business. So the opportunity is really to do business thinking, even as a technologist, business thinking right from the get-go, so that you can help yourself succeed, specifically in healthcare, because healthcare is not an easy ecosystem.
Yeah, from my limited interaction with companies in the healthcare space, it definitely seems very difficult. And on your first bit of advice of just understanding that everyone's in the same boat, I think it's amazing because that applies to so much more than just entrepreneurs. Like me as a student, I could relate to that. Like these are the conversations I'm having with my friends. Like, yeah, being a student is hard, but we're all in the same boat. And just understanding that, we're not responsible for doing absolutely everything here on campus, just every little bit. I think that was, it's a great piece of advice for entrepreneurs, but I think also for anyone.
Yeah, as a student, it's more obvious though. As a student, you're on a class, you're part of a class. So
Yeah.
everybody is doing stuff together. You're learning together. You have the same lectures, and so it's natural. You have your peers around you. As an entrepreneur, that's not the case, right? You're usually all alone, or you maybe have your co-founders. If you're lucky, you have co-founders. You should have co-founders. That's actually mostly the case, and most companies do, and that's good. So you have at least one or two persons you can ping pong your problems with. But you don't have this class unless you have an accelerator program. And that's why I'm saying an accelerator is a great idea. And you learn so much, you meet people that are like-minded. And even if you don't stay in touch with these people, even the short interactions that you had with them throughout the program are really valuable.
Perfect. So thank you for that last bit of advice. I think that was amazing. And I think that wraps up our conversation for today. Thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure.
And Ali, thank you so much for your time and invitation to this. Look forward.
Yeah. Thank you.